Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind of reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Welcome to the Happiness Show. This is George Ortega. I'm here to talk about happiness because happiness is, always has been, and always will be the point of it all. Okay, today this is actually our last show, at least for a while. It's called The Last Show, at least for a while, Happiness and Ending Poverty. And I want to kind of like explain why I'm ending the Happiness Show. Basically, when I started the show about 3 years ago, it's almost 3 years ago to the month, I was about 80–85% happy or so, you know, and like over the last few years, in addition to like doing the show and helping others to become happier, you know, I've been working on my own happiness. And you know, slowly, gradually, it's been like increasing over the months and you know, last few years. And this last Christmas season, but the week between Christmas and New Year's, I realized that I'd reached like what I consider to be at like 100% happiness. I mean, I consider myself to be 100% happy. It's not that I'm like happy all the time or very completely happy all the time, but it's just like it's kind of like it's an evaluation, it's an attitude. It's like, yes, and then, you know, like what was happening also at the time that I was like working on a campaign to help charities, you know, to raise money, and I was like focusing more on poverty, because poverty is like really the most important, I think the most urgent cause on our planet. So then I began to listen to speeches by Jeffrey Sachs, who's like he's a professor at Columbia University. He's the director of the Earth Institute there, and you know, he's the leading authority on happiness, leading professional authority. And you know, when I came to understand the facts of poverty and stuff, I said I couldn't turn my back on it. You know, it didn't make sense to keep doing the show and ignore the plight of all these people that are just suffering so much needlessly, you know, because of lack of food and resources, etc. So basically, I decided to end the show. Again, this is the last show, in order to devote my time, pretty much full time, to helping to end poverty. You know, I'd like to do more shows eventually. You know, perhaps in a year or two. The poverty movement is growing. It's really becoming more of an international movement, and hopefully that'll be the case. Hopefully, you know, within the next 2 years, enough of it will have been done to really make people aware of the problem and have people in governments really address it, to the point where maybe, hopefully, I can begin, you know, taping shows again. Okay, so here's the problem. There are about 1 billion people on the planet that live on less than $1 a day. You know, it's what they call extreme poverty, and they're dying at a rate of over 20,000 each day. You know, and this doesn't include like the diseases they get from lack of proper nutrition. You know, there's just, you know, they're leading very, very difficult lives for lack of food and basic necessities. Thomas Poggi, another professor at Columbia University's Earth Institute, he's a philosophy professor, he reported in one of his speeches that about 18 million people, or about a third of the people who die on our planet every year, actually die from poverty-related causes. That's, you know, a third of all deaths every year are from poverty-related causes. Perhaps not absolutely, you know, specifically from poverty, but, you know, from something that's very related. And that's, you know, my God, a third of all deaths. That's how pervasive, that's how big the problem of poverty is in our world. Okay, now in 1970, the 22 richest countries in the world made a pledge. They pledged 0.7% of their annual income, their GNP, gross national product, to help these poor countries to end this poverty. Now, 0.7% is not even 1%. You know, like what they pledged, it doesn't amount to even 1% of their national income. Okay, so it's not like they were pledging so very much. It's not like it was going to be such a great sacrifice to them. And that was like in 1970. Now here we are in 2006. Only 5 countries have met that pledge. You know, a few of the Scandinavian countries, I think Norway, Denmark. The average of the 22 richest countries, when you compile, you know, what they all give, the average is 0.3%, you know, of their national income, of their annual income. So that's less than the 0.7% that they pledged 30 years ago. The United States was, until very recently, actually at the very bottom of the list. For years, we were giving about 0.14, 15, 13. You know, we were really the stingiest, and now we're second to last. Right now, we give 0.17% of our GNP, you know, to ending poverty. And to make matters worse, here in the United States, most of that foreign aid that we give doesn't go to the poor people that need it the most. It really goes to countries where we have a very specific vested national interest, such as Afghanistan and Israel, that, you know, it may, more often than not, that money does not go to help poor people. It goes to just, you know, might go into their military or something. Okay, so the problem naturally is that our political leaders, not just in the United States but all over the world, they refuse to honor this pledge. They refuse to have our governments honor a pledge that we give 1% of our annual income to these poor people. And, you know, that's, you know, they're really refusing to do the will of the people. I mean, it's something that in 1970 was pledged, and this pledge has been incidentally repeated hundreds of times. You know, it's under the UN. It's been repeated so many times in different kinds of conferences and papers and studies and all. Okay, and here's a great irony. Most, you know, almost nobody in the United States understands this problem. When people are asked, you know, well, how much of our annual income, how much of our gross domestic product do we give to ending poverty? The average answer is that, no, in foreign aid to ending poverty, the average answer is that we give about 25% of our GNP, you know, in foreign aid. Okay, can I have it? Thanks. The reality is that we really devote less. You know, again, we devote less than 1%. We're here in the United States, we're devoting 0.17. Well, no, it's actually in as a percent of our federal budget. You know, I'm sorry. What I was referring to was not as 25% of our GNP, but 25% of our federal budget. Most people think we give to these poor countries. In actuality, we give less than 1% of our federal budget to, you know, to these poor countries. And here's what's most telling, I think. On average, when people are asked, well, how much should we be giving? People will say, well, we should be giving around 10%. Okay, so we're giving about 10. People think we're giving 25%, 25 times more of our federal budget, you know, to poor countries than we're giving, and they think we should actually be giving 10%, 10 times more than we actually give. So that's a big problem. And you know, I would imagine then when people begin to understand that, when people begin to know that, then they can begin to apply pressure on the politicians to really, you know, do what's right in that case. Okay, here's another major problem. You know, you would think that the United States and other rich countries, you know, with all the money that we have, with all the wealth we have, we would establish trade policies to help the poorer countries develop their economies, develop their trade, to be able to trade with us so that they can earn more money. not only do we not help them, we actually make it very difficult for them to trade with us. There's a World Trade Organization that's responsible for creating the rules of trade, and rich countries like the United States have a lot of influence with the World Trade Organization because much of their operating budget comes from us. And so that through the imposition of tariffs, anti-dumping duties, and quotas, we deny these countries a great amount of trade. We don't allow trade with them because we're protecting our own industries. We subsidize industries like our textile industries. We could be here in the United States. We could be buying clothes, textiles more inexpensively. But again, our government, the World Trade Organization, the rich countries don't allow the poor countries to sell us those less expensive goods. So through these very kind of like self-serving, protectionist trade policies, again, Thomas Poggi of Columbia University reported that the poor countries of the world pretty much lose about $700 billion in potential revenues. To give you an idea of how much $700 billion is, if the 22 rich countries fulfilled their pledge to give 0.7% of their annual income to these poor countries, that would amount to about $200 billion a year. So again, through the rich countries of the world maintaining these very self-serving and callous protectionist trade policies, they're denying poor countries, trade that could actually give them 3 times more than the aid that we would be giving them if we fulfilled that pledge. Okay. Another important problem is that people don't realize how inexpensively this global poverty could be eradicated completely. For years there were myths that we invest, we give them so much, but nothing happens. That's a myth. I mean, basically in the 1970s there were over 40,000 people dying of poverty, of extreme poverty every day. We've cut that in half. Now it's it's still a very, very tragic and unconscionable 20,000 a day, over 20,000 a day. But we have made a lot of progress. It is possible to end this extreme poverty. But when countries like the United States refuse to give even 0.2% of our income to helping solve this problem, you can understand why after decades we still have so many poor on the planet. So again, there are a lot of myths regarding a lot of people think that, well, there's not enough food, there's not enough money. These are all myths. These are all myths by people who either generally they don't know the situation, they haven't studied it, or hopefully in a smaller percentage of them perhaps have studied it, but for some reason just don't believe that it's our responsibility or obligation to give. They don't have a sense of compassion for these people, so they would rather not give, even though they know that for us to give would really help them. Okay. Another problem is we in the United States especially, we contribute a lot of pollution to the world, through our burning of fossil fuels, our cars and all. We pollute the environment. This is leading to now what's pretty much universally understood. It's doubted by very few, a global warming. The Earth's climate is warming just very little, about 1%, but that 1% has major impact on the climate of the planet. For example, right now on the planet there are twice as many drought areas, as there were in the 1970s, and these drought areas occur, many of them in Africa and Asia, where this land is desperately needed to grow food. And also another effect of global warming, of the climate changes that it's created, is that a lot of areas that again were needed for food in these poor countries now become flooded, so that they can't grow food because of that. So, it's not only that the rich countries of the world aren't doing nearly enough to help these poor people to eat, to just to sustain themselves. We actually are creating more of a problem for them through our just like indifference to the welfare of our planet, of our climate. Okay. The basic problem is it's greed, it's selfishness, it's callousness. Just as a brief aside, it's not, I don't blame us. We didn't create ourselves. We come into this life, it's whether it's God or fate, whether if we're good people, we're lucky, and if we're less good, we're just not, we're not that lucky. It's unfortunate, but I don't believe that we just kind of like author our thoughts in that way. So, again, we didn't create ourselves, but nevertheless, we are manifesting great greed and selfishness and callousness toward the plight of so many people on the planet. Again, it's 1 billion who are suffering, who live on $1 a day or less. About 2 more billion beyond that live on less than $3 a day. So it's really a great many people on the planet that just are not having their basic needs met. Again, for us to not devote even 1% of our annual income, our gross national product, to helping these poor countries rise up out of poverty, it's criminal. It's absolutely criminal. In religion, in Judeo-Christianity, there's the concept of tithing. Basically, the Bible instructs that a person should give about 10% of their income as a tithe to, I think it was to the poor, to people, those who need. And again, we refuse to give, here in the United States, we not only refuse to give 1%, we refuse to give even 0.2%. And the other great criminal act that the rich countries of the world impose is those unfair protectionist trade policies. My God, it's bad enough that we're so greedy and callous that we don't give them even 1% of our annual income to end poverty. But when we add to that, just through our greed, not allowing them fair trade, not allowing them to sell us products so they can feed themselves, that's nothing less than evil. It's absolutely evil. Okay, well, how does this relate to happiness? Okay, over the last 50 years, the United States has become 3 times richer. Per capita, we have 3 times as much money as we did back around World War II. But the great irony of this is that even though we're so much richer, we're not any happier. And in fact, there's much more depression. There's much more mental illnesses than there was back then. There's much more insomnia. Our kids are just like, stressed out and all. So the question becomes, is there justice in the world? Is there justice? Is there a God that imposes justice on us, or is justice part of the natural condition, part of how nature works? I would believe there is. I think if we look into our personal lives, I think we discover that when we do things rightly, either nature or God tends to reward us. And when we do what's wrong, when we do evil, when we don't do what's right, then in general we tend to be punished. So then the question becomes, well, how just would it be for God to enable the people of the rich countries of the world to become as happy as we could be, while we're being so greedy and callous and selfish toward the poor? And again, there have been studies conducted that demonstrate in as few as from 4 to 6 weeks, a person learning certain happiness skills can become about 25% happier. So we certainly have the knowledge and technology to become much happier, but it seems that God or nature is not allowing us to experience that greater happiness. And again, it makes sense that if there is justice, that while we continue our callous indifference to the needs of the poor, that we're not going to become happier. I mean, okay. And again, to specify why, not giving them 1% of our annual income, not allowing them to trade with us. Our media hardly ever presents the problem to us. Our politicians, you might hear a few sentences about global poverty in a debate, when they're debating in presidential elections. You might hear a few words from the politicians, but poverty has never become the national issue. Let's say that, for example, praying in schools has become, or that teaching evolution in schools has become, or that immigration, my God, has become. Poverty hasn't become a national issue, and that's the fault of our politicians. That's the fault of our media, and to a more general extent, that's our fault. For not electing people into office that are more compassionate. So basically, again, it doesn't seem like we deserve to be much happier if we continue our callousness. Okay. So again, the reason I guess that I'm deciding to end the show is that I've done enough work. There's over 130 episodes where I pretty much describe in a lot of different ways how we can become happier, both as individuals and as societies, as countries. As individuals, just believing we're happier, just investing in relationships. As a society, teaching happiness in schools, having happiness be more of a component of our government, teaching happiness as a business. I've devoted a lot of time and effort to just helping us understand how we can become happier. And so I just thought that I hadn't addressed the for us, it's a matter of learning. When you're living on less than $1 a day and you're not getting enough to eat each day, then it's really not about learning. It's about basic needs, and that's why I'm devoting. As I end the show, what I'm planning to do is to. I'm in the process of creating a poverty solutions consulting firm to help poverty organizations to get the word out, to develop information dissemination campaigns that will help people understand the problem and help people understand how easy it is to solve the problem. One thing that I just remembered, in terms of that 1%, that 0.7% pledge that we made, if we were to fulfill that pledge, we wouldn't feel it. We wouldn't feel a loss of that donation, either on a personal or on a national level. And when you think about it, that just explains how horrible, how evil it is to not give that money. When we just wouldn't feel its loss, and it means saving the lives of so many people. It's unconscionable that we don't give that. All right. Another thing, something else that I'm planning to devote some time to is an idea that I've presented on this show, and I've got a website about. It's called Profit Donation Capitalism. The website is www.profitdonationcapitalism.org, and basically it describes a new socioeconomic system. It's a kind of capitalism, but it's not like the capitalism that we have today. In today's capitalism, we buy products, and the profits from those products generally go to rich people, rich corporations, rich stockholders, and as we can see, those rich people are kind of like fueling our politics that pretty much ignore the plight of the poor. So the purpose of this new kind of capitalism would be to introduce a new type of company, a new type of product. That means, for example, let's say when you would go to a supermarket and you wanted to buy ketchup, you could buy ketchup from Hunt's or Heinz, and that product, the profits from that product would be going to make rich people much richer. Or if you buy it from another company, and this is what it would be called a profit donating business, these companies exist exclusively to fund charitable causes. In this case, for example, a company would be formed to fund an end to poverty, to raise money to help people to eat and have proper health care, so that your choice becomes of buying a ketchup from Hunt's or Heinz, or buying a ketchup that's of equal value, paying the same price for the same quality, but knowing that the profit from that new product, from that profit donation capitalist product, would be used to end poverty. And recently I've been thinking about this idea, and I'm actually in school right now, and fortunately I've got a mentor who just approved a summer project that where I'll actually be creating a proposal to submit to poverty organizations to implement profit donation capitalism, through a certain campaign. But I just recently realized that another very important component of profit donation capitalism and its products is that when you're selling millions and millions of products, whether it's ketchup or salad dressing or tomato sauce or whatever, throughout the world, if these poverty organizations begin to sell those products, those product labels would be ideal vehicles for educating the global public, consumers, shoppers all over the world, about the realities of poverty, about how little we give, how little it would take to end it, and how important the problem is. So again, I'm planning to create that proposal over the summer and submit it hopefully over the fall. Okay, with regard to the poverty, I hope that I've awakened you to how extreme a problem it is. Again, 1/3 of all the deaths on the planet are because of poverty-related causes, and I hope I've encouraged you to want to get involved, however you can, in ending it. There's a campaign going on now called the One Campaign. It's part of a more international campaign, but if you're on the internet, log on to the website and look into it, and there are various ways how you can help, writing senators, congress people to help them do the right thing. Okay, well, I've enjoyed doing this show, and again, hopefully, the poverty will be. Gary, give me the is this the middle? Yeah, thanks. I've enjoyed doing the show, and hopefully, once the poverty situation is much more under control, I'll be able to do more shows. Okay, well, that's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. Be good, think well, feel very happy.
Happiness is powerful. It's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.